Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to your home for Deadlock News, Deadlock Weekly. We're heavy on matchmaking and player sentiment this week. We've got a hugely exciting pro match to look at, and obviously we'll finish off reading your comments. If you want to stay in the loop, be sure to subscribe. Matchmaking's been a huge topic of discussion this week, and so that's where we're going to start. I've talked a ton about matchmaking before on this channel, and I've spent a ton of time looking at and thinking about the issues that specifically the deadlock system runs into, and so I want to give you all a few reasons why the matchmaking system feels as bad as it does, because I agree with you all, it's bad to ass at best. And so for a long time, prior to this most recent update, bad matchmaking came from wide skill parties being a huge part of the main queuing system, meaning you have someone who's an oracle and someone who's an alchemist playing on the same team together. And this is still the case, but recently it's been further emphasized by so many people returning to the game with their rank decade to Initiate 1. And with all those relatively good players in Initiate 1, it creates a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, former Archon players in Initiate, they can't rank up because they're stuck playing against half former Archon players and half true Initiates. I hear a lot about Elo Hell not existing and that being a product of bad players, and we'll talk about this more later on, but I also find those takes never really come from people who are stuck in Initiate 1 or Silver in Counter-Strike. And the fact that Initiate has only gotten bigger since the update implies that more and more people are deranking and just getting stuck, which, I mean, honestly, you shouldn't need me to tell you that 50% of the player base being in the absolute bottom rank is a bad thing and the sign of a broken system. And so if you're in Initiate 1, I'm very curious, does that line up with your experience in the game? And the player count does continue to decrease, which again, expected, natural, and not worrying. Yet, I don't want to sound the alarm because people are just going to naturally move on. A bunch of people pointed out Silksong in the comments last week, but if there is one thing that's actively driving people away and pushing them to load up Silksong instead of Deadlock, it's certainly matchmaking. I see it in every comment section, every forum now, how bad the quality of games just in general is. And that specific idea we'll touch on a little bit more at the end of the video. Then I got a couple important updates to Statlocker for you. The Statlocker team announced actually last week, and I just missed it, that Valve has drastically reduced the amount of data that Statlocker is able to pull themselves, and despite the Statlocker team reaching out to Valve about the issue, Valve hasn't responded to them. So if you notice that Statlocker is missing a ton of your matches recently, like I did, you're not alone. But luckily, just on Friday, they introduced a solution. The Statlocker devs added a way for you to fetch your own matches directly, and this way you can circumnavigate the waiting period for your matches to populate. Just another super useful tool from the Statlocker team. And then on top of that, the Deadlock Wiki also got a huge update to bring it up to speed with the game's facelift. I think it's awesome that there is a team of people just so dedicated to the game to keep up with the ebbs and flows of development just for the wiki's sake and the players' sake of using it. Then guys, as we move on to Winrates Weekly, there were no patches or big meta shifts this week, so I don't expect all that big of changes here, but Mina has pulled herself from the bottom of the barrel after she got buffed a couple times recently, and I've even started seeing people complaining about her, specifically her ult on objectives, which I understand, but I don't know if it bothers me, at least not yet. I do have, though, a bit of a habit of saying that and then coming back next week and being like, this is the worst thing in the world, actually. So we'll see where I stand next week, but I feel like she's vulnerable when she's ulting like that. If you literally have like one or two people there, you can usually stop her. I don't know, if you've got like a Mina just sauntering up to an objective unguarded and you can't react in time, I feel like that's more of a positioning issue than Mina's ult is too strong issue. It can be incredibly annoying having to babysit the lane she's in, though. And then it did just occur to me that Ivy is strong because her gun build is probably just nuking low ranks like Hayes does, but then still, even in high elo, Hayes' win rate isn't that bad these days. And then guys, as we dive into our tournament roundup, we had another 3-map banger between the European heavyweights Buff Enjoyers and Abrahams, even though map 3 did wind up getting quite out of hand and a bit of feeding from a few of the Buff Enjoyers. Abrams walks away with this one, and what do you know, it's behind another dominant ABL performance. Not nearly as much toxicity this week either, beyond a couple easies and question marks in chat. But for once, our bigger story is in North America. Hydra Nation gets 2-0'd in stunning fashion for the second week in a row, this time by the Baroness Hotel. Obviously, Do and Ido have insane sat lines and absolutely ran Hydra Nation out of the server, but I do wonder if this says more about Hydra Nation, especially after the second 2-0 stomp in 2 weeks, with them looking so dominant. I mean, it's hard for me to think of a time when they haven't been. But either way, thanks to the Baroness Hotel and Sneaky Golems, who proved that North America may be a bit more competitive than we all thought. You also may have noticed that Sneaky Golems, our winners from last week, weren't here this week. One of the players on the team got an IRL opportunity and just needed to take that. So, as we all know, this is a very fragile esports scene. We've seen the best teams come and go, so that was the end of the Sneaky Golems. DMB did make the transfer over to the Baroness Hotel from the Sneaky Golems to be able to play this week, though, so that's cool. Another thing from Night Shift that was super interesting was the prevalence of two items that are bought much less so in matchmaking, even in higher level lobbies, and those are Cultist Sacrifice and Veil Walker. I think for Cultist, this one is just, it's on the nerf cooldown. There aren't many heroes that don't benefit from its buff in a massive way, so to me, this one's easy to justify. I see why everyone's buying it, but the interesting one to me is Veil Walker. They're using this item to obviously get the healing, but in many cases, they're creating opportunities to initiate fights that otherwise might not be there, or get the jump on their enemy, start a fight with advantage, to go back to some other concepts from the channel. Throwing a cart from invisibility as Doorman is a great example, or Paradox getting a clean opportunity to start and hit her combo. They're using this to create opportunities, and I think it's super interesting because it's the clearest instance we've had yet of something that we see in other esports all the time, a strat that is just killer for the pros that just doesn't translate effectively into pug play. It'll be really interesting to see if that continues. And if it does, how Valve is going to balance around that. Then guys, the Death Slam team also announced a new Deathy Death Slam tournament, so if you're an individual player of average to above average rank, but not an Eternus or super high level player, that's a way to have a great time and meet some new like-minded folks about Deadlock, so signups are in the description for you there. And then unfortunately, we are going to finish off this section with some bad news. Dead Air announced that Deadlock Deathmatch has been postponed indefinitely. This is from their statement. Unfortunately, we were unable to secure a sponsor for the regular event season and have to postpone both challengers and champions due to lack of funding. The winning teams from our first season have been paid, however, it was out of pocket and not sustainable for the future. I think everybody's a huge fan of Dead Air, so this of course stings. They kept the door open for future opportunities though, so of course I'll keep you in the loop as soon as those pop up. Then guys, let's talk some Deadlock. Our first comment comes from Hyper Noxious, who said, "I'm generally opposed to regular rank resets. Anytime they happen in other games, I just notice a few weeks of awful matchmaking as the game panics to sort everyone back to where they were. I feel like the people whining for rank resets are the delusional gold players that feel like they're, quote, stuck in imaginary elo hell, and it's the game's fault they can't rank up. And if they just got a rank reset, they'd be able to get a higher rank, when in reality, they genuinely deserve their current rank." To close the loop on what we talked about earlier, and generally, yeah, the guy who's been in Gold Nova for 800 hours is probably going to stay in Gold Nova. I don't know anybody like that, especially nobody who's talking right now, but that's not what's happening in Deadlock. What we have is people who were at a much higher rank and now are locked back down at the lowest rank because it's so polluted with people with different skills due to rank decay and wide skill matchmaking. If these people were stuck in elo hell with a bunch of actual initiate players saying something along the lines of, "But my team is so bad, if my teammates were just better, I could rank up," then that sounds like the imaginary elo hell that you're talking about. But the people complaining about elo hell and Deadlock aren't even really mentioning their team specifically, at least from what I've seen. Obviously that exists, but they're more talking about how every game has horrible quality. X person on the other team is obviously way better. This person's smurfing. There's 3 people on each team that are shitting on everyone else. That kind of type of stuff. I'm focusing much more on like the people who are this now growing Initiate 1 group. Not really people like me, where it's like if I were like, my teammates are all just so bad in Emissary and Ritualist. If only I could get better, if only my teammates could all play like I do, then I'd be an Oracle. That's real elo hell. Or that's the real imaginary elo hell that you're talking about. I'm thinking much more about that just growing Initiate 1 group. Our next one comes from Awesome Alex 72. As far as rank resets go, there actually was one on the August 19th update. It was subtle, but if you go back to Statlock and look at the average match rank of any given player, it went down by a couple of ranks. My friends and I went from Archon to Emissary lobbies consistently to Ritualist Arcanist lobbies. Also, if people haven't played in a long time, they are put in very low rank lobbies, regardless of where they were before the break. And this one we actually talked about in Deadlock Weekly when it happened. There was an under the hood update specifically to Hero Elo a couple of weeks before the hero patch. What this did was it drastically lowered your elo for non-played heroes, so if it was your first game on that hero, you would get dropped a few whole rank brackets, like Emissary down to Alchemist. Instead of prior, it would drop you from Emissary 4 to like Emissary 1, and that way you don't get dumpstered your first like 10 games on a hero that you used to. It actually synced up perfectly where I started playing Yamato, and that's why I noticed it. And then you fast forward a month, all these new heroes come out, we all start playing with them, and our ranks drop because we're playing in lower elo games. And if you know anything about an elo system, you know that losing to a lower ranked opponent than you are is catastrophic for that hidden score. This is a huge reason that the bell curve on ranks has moved from Ritualist Emissary to Archimist Alchemist in the past month or two. Then our next comment comes from Window9213. So Doorman can't TP people into his base, but Lash still can? Okay. I feel like people miss the point with this, but the first thing is that they did actually change this back a little bit. He can't send you into the fountain. He can send you back into the fountain again, but not all the way back up where the zip lines start like he used to be able to. It's much closer to the door now, but he can send you back into the fountain. But the thing I feel like people miss with this is that Lash's ability to do that is his ultimate ability, and he has to put himself in somewhat danger to do it. Doorman, absolutely, it takes more skill to do, but I've seen it happen enough times to know that it's not high enough for the amount of value that you get out of it, which is why it was nerfed. Then guys, I did see a few videos this week that I wanted to share with you all. A lot of people talking about the 4-lane map recently, myself included, and Gluten Snake actually coordinated a game with a bunch of pros all playing on that 4-lane map with all the new heroes, and it's an entertaining bout. Then Arcade Master made a review/video essay video just talking about the things that they like about Deadlock, and I think if you're a Deadlock fan, it's a great, easy watch. Then guys, Connor at Dead Unlock made a great video expanding on the whole Veil Walker thing that we were talking about earlier. So if those sound like your thing, make sure to head over that way. Then guys, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to all the members. Your support really means the world to me, and thank you so much to this Wraith and her team for being so toxic that it keeps the rest of this kind of not super entertaining gameplay that I got for you this week engaging. I'll play more Calico and get a better match for you guys next week. I hope you guys all have a fantastic week, and I will see you again next time. Peace.